is very interesting, but stupid.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Caught in a landslide, no escape from reality. Oh, sorry, that's not reality, that's Flash. Samsung Kong got eliminated. But anyway, this is Fantasy vs. Flash on Ground Zero. And oh yeah, it's going to be great. Two of the best performing players of the season about to battle it out on a 4-player map. Yeah, this is like guaranteed goddamn amazing. I love it when we have a guaranteed good match like this, but okay. Getting ready to start? Giddy. Aren't you glad I didn't sing that Bohemian Rhapsody segment, by the way? Horrible voice. Except, over the 10 o'clock position, in yellow, is a Terran player named Fantasy. For some reason not wearing his glasses. I thought that was awfully odd before the game started. I was like, why is he not wearing his glasses? Maybe got some kind of optic upgrade. Both of these guys have been like Terminators this season, but I'll give you the stats in a second. Flash is down at the 8 o'clock position, and purple. Purple Flash, and Fantasy is at the 10 o'clock. Now, for the fun facts, which I didn't manage to get too many of them in the last set. It opened it up with some cheesiness. But this map is Ground Zero, and it is a Terran favored map. So these two are really natural choices for the map. 10 TVTs have been played on this map, which should show you that it's very favorable to Terran, and a lot of Terran players are fielded on this map. There's Flash's dad. I've been watching Brood War long enough to recognize Flash's dad. Yeah, it's kind of sad. Sad in a way. I'm sure many viewers recognize him as Flash's father as well. Just because I've cast so many damn finals where Flash has been in it. Okay, let's get to the stats of the players. Here, Flash has had 19 wins and 3 losses this season. An absurd record. And Fantasy's is just about the same amount of absurdness. He has 13 wins and 2 losses. So they're kind of on par as far as the wins to loss ratio. But Fantasy just hasn't played as many games as Flash has. But still, 19 wins, 3 losses. That's crazy. That's nearly a perfect record for Flash, and I think it's one of the best records he's had in the Pro League. Although, I guess you can't really compare it, because this Pro League has been much shorter, fewer teams, fewer games, stuff like that. So it is a bit difficult to compare stuff like that. But yes, excellent record from both. So both these guys are playing on top of their games. And a TVT player between two excellent Terrans like this that are both on top of their games is some of the best StarCraft ever, in my opinion. I mean, normally TVTs will kind of put me to sleep because, yeah, between any other Terran players, I'd be like, oh, this might be good. There's a potential that this might be good. But between Flash and Fantasy, oh man, Fantasy, he's putting his factory, hiding it right behind his natural expansion. Hiding that immediately, so Flash is inside of the space looking for the factory, looking to see what Fantasy is up to next, but Fantasy has built his factory outside just to make it a little bit quicker, I think, to get those terrorist vultures inside of Flash's base. Oh, there is Reach. I haven't mentioned that. Reach is going to retire after this season. He's finally retiring, and that was kind of big news the other day, probably about a week ago, that Reach is going to retire after the season. But here comes Fantasy. He's going to scout inside of Flash's base. He's looking around and sees a second command center coming up for Flash. So what he's going to try to do is be his usual vulture terrorist self and get on the harassment that way. Flash has built a bunker at the front, but so far I think he probably only has a couple of Marines, and it's, if any Marines, just put one Marine in there. But here comes the vultures from Fantasies, building his second base as well. And both players, this is very important, going to have to keep up that macro on a map like this. This is a great TVT map, I think, because it just makes players take one half of the map, and those are always the most exciting TVTs when you're dealing with guys as high caliber as Flash and Fantasy. Both are TVT masters, absolute masters. Although, if you look at their head-to-head record, this is another fun fact I wrote down, Flash is incredibly ahead in the head-to-head record. It's 13-5 in Flash's favor. So these two have met many, many times, but Flash almost always wins. But I've seen quite a few Fantasy versus Flash games in the past. Star Perk coming up, by the way, for Fantasy. And I've seen these guys play each other quite a bit in the past, and Fantasy always comes close. Always comes close. Even in the games he loses, he takes Flash the distance, just like Rocky in the first movie. Rocky didn't win in the first movie either. So there. Everybody likes Rocky. But Armory coming up now for Flash. See if he will be prepared for the drop, because the control tower just now coming up for Fantasy, so he's working on drop first. Going to try to drop some pesky vultures inside of the base. But it's going to be, just because of his positioning, it's going to be difficult to get successful drops on. If he is going to try to do a sneak drop inside the main or something like that, he's going to have to go the long way around, because if he goes behind that natural expansion, Flash is going to spot it quickly. Although Flash is in the same position, just because of how they're close to each other like that, the natural expansions face each other, is going to be hard to drop inside the main. But let's see what happens. The 4 vultures out for Fantasy. He's just kind of hovering around, waiting for the dropship, I think. Possibly looking for a scout as well while he's waiting. And Flash just now coming in with his SCV. I think the SCV is going to make it past the defenses, because there's nothing at the front to fight back the SCV. So the SCV is going to get the scout and everything at the front. Flash is getting the scouting information he needs. But here comes Fantasy. He's dropping 1 vulture on the high ground behind the natural expansion. Flash is going to see this and try to intercept this dropship with 2 Goliaths. He built 2 Goliaths to take this down. Instead of building vultures of his own, he's used the Goliaths to snipe the dropship. But it seems that 2 SCVs have gone down already. 3 from Fantasy's trying to be his terrorist vulture self, but he's losing all of his vultures to the tanks. Tanks just sniped everything inside the main. Flash was 100% prepared for that. And so far hasn't been able to take out this vulture. Back here he even transferred his SCVs to save them from the pesky vulture. 1 mine being laid by Fantasy on that high ground area. It's going to make it difficult for Flash to do anything else about future siege tanks at that position too. Okay, some more vultures being dropped, and the mines that'll help out a lot against Flash's unit composition. Because Flash, he has the Goliaths and the tanks both susceptible to the mine drags. And he doesn't have his own vultures to really fight this back without having to deal with the mines. So right now, Flash has transferred all of his SCVs back to his natural expansion to keep them safe as Fantasy continues his reign of terror. Inside the main, shut down finally by Flash's tanks. Moving in with the 3 tanks just to make sure he could take out those vultures. Not sure if Flash noticed where the mines were dropped, but he got awfully close to that 1 mine right next to the main. So Fantasy could get very lucky, and Flash might not have seen that and might accidentally drag into SCVs later in the game. But okay, so some dropship coming in, 2 siege tanks on the high ground area. Fantasy decides that they're within range of the siege tank, doesn't want to risk them being completely and utterly destroyed, so he picks them up and he's going to take them somewhere else, possibly try to drop inside the main here in a second too. Since he is in the middle, so far it's not clear what he's going to do, but Flash is moving up with his own army, and I think he's going to try to put on a temporary contain at the natural expansion, try to come in soon enough with SCVs as well, but he's pushing. Right now he's pushing, looking for, I think he found that barracks floating down into the middle of the map as well, but here comes Flash. Flash does have more tanks. He has more tanks. So if he positions them correctly, he'll be able to crawl his way to the natural expansion and eventually shut down Fantasy's economy. But there is, I think there was an SCV going out to scout. Yeah, Fantasy just wanted to know what was coming his way, just how many tanks were positioned from Flash. Flash does have an excellent tank line ready to go. He just scanned to make sure he knows where all of the tanks are. I think there was one on the high ground, but Fantasy just picked up a couple of tanks too. To move over to this position, and yeah, Flash is trying to set up his contain now, but trying is the key word. Fantasy has put a tank line of his own between the resupply line and the tanks at the top. Look at all these tanks from Flash. Flash has a ridiculous amount of tanks out already. As there come the tanks from Flash, has a couple of SCVs to repair that tank before it goes out into the battle. but not a lot of anti-air right now from Flash. He had a couple, about 2 or 3 Goliaths earlier, but yeah, just the one single Goliath I see with the rest of this army. 2 parts of the army, 2 parts of Flash's army are separated, and Fantasy's trying to get in the perfect position to take down the tanks. So far not up, and then here comes a Valkyrie out for Flash. He's anticipating the race that are coming in from Fantasy. The Valkyries to be able to do this as long as he has scan prepared. He just wasted a couple of scan, I think, trying to get the position of the tank. So the Valkyrie sniped. Valkyrie sniped by Flash. That was a big investment to go for that Valkyrie, so it's going to put him quite a bit behind, and he might have to retreat soon with these tanks. He has his Goliath, but one single Goliath not going to take down all of these Wraiths, so Flash is retreating at the moment, going back with his tanks. SKTelecom T1 fans looking happy, because Fantasy chasing down these tanks. He will be able to destroy half of Flash's army, so yeah, SKT awfully happy about this.